no discussion of YA or kids series of the book fair era, which is an undefined era that I just made up, but it's loosely the 80s and the 90s, but sometimes it includes the 70s or the early 2000s, if and when I wanted to. But basically, no discussion of this era would be complete without the Choose Your Own Adventure book series. So come on in, pull up a chair. This is our own little adult book fair. Where did that come from? This video is aimed more at adults. It may have some adult sort of bits and pieces in it. It's not really aimed at kids. And it will contain spoilers as well. So listener discretion, I guess. So, a quote. "Do not read this book from beginning to end. These pages contain many different adventures you may have on Sugarcane Island. From time to time as you read along, you will be asked to make choices. Your decisions may lead to success or disaster. The adventures you have will be the result of your choices. After you make a choice, follow the instructions to see what happens to you next. Remember, you must think before you act. One mistake could be your last. Good luck." I love the drama. So these were incredibly exciting reads, in my opinion, and the opinion of the other people in my class when I was a kid. They made a game of reading, and like all of these series, they allowed for swapping books with friends and just had an endless number of titles that could make up a collection that really looked like pretty on a shelf when you had them all in a row. In case you've never come across one of these, they're small books with white covers. They have a colored frame filled with, frankly, priceless imagery that gives you a sense of the aesthetic, shall we say, of the contents. A kind of montage, I guess. Above the title is the red Choose Your Own Adventure banner, so you know what the books are. And a little tagline tells you, "You're the star of the story." Very fun. And usually up there they have a number of how many endings the book has, of which there are quite a few. One of the ones that I have here in my little stash has 44 possible endings. It's very exciting. The themes are like very broad and easily recognizable genres, which I love. You can imagine entering into some exciting story worlds, and I think that's really fun. Some of the themes are things like pirates, spaceships, being stranded on a desert island, knights and wizards and that kind of thing, time travel. And I have one that where you get to solve a mystery, and I really like that. They're the kinds of things that kids used to imagine and sort of make believe or play pretend about, which kind of made me wonder, do kids still do that? If any of you have kids, or if you, I don't know, let me know. Do kids still pretend stuff? I really hope that they do. Yeah. So they're kind of things that, you know, a kid might recognize it from movies, especially like adventure movies in the 80s and 90s. It makes them very easy for like a younger reader to immediately get a sense of what they're about and if they might like the story. So just in case you don't know these, which, you know, you might not, inside the books are addressed to you, so second person, and you get given a situation and usually two choices about what you, the protagonist, want to do. And then you turn to the page number listed next to the choice that you want to make, and then you read a little bit more and make more choices until you reach an ending. The story length isn't often that long, but there's a joy in kind of going back and trying a choice you didn't take before and having a different story each time. I think everybody used to do this. They would leave a finger in the page when they made a decision in case they wanted to like go back and change their mind if it didn't work out. Yeah, one story, which if I have this right, the book is Inside UFO 5440, but I don't want to 100% confirm that because I haven't checked that that's the right one. But there was actually a hidden ending, which wasn't attached to any of the stories. And it was about a utopian paradise island that the reader could search through the pages for and find it. And I just thought that was cute. The books have illustrations to make them more fun and exciting and probably a little bit more appealing for kids as well. And over time, the authors started to have fun with the format, and they'd put in little jokes like plot lines that loop back on themselves or have surprise little twists in the plot. Like they can get pretty out there sometimes, and sometimes they'll have like a joke ending. And yeah, this made young readers feel like they were in on the joke. And I remember thinking that this was a really cool thing about them, the kind of tone that they had as a younger reader. They were doing things that books for grown-ups were not doing. At least it felt that way. I kind of feel like that way. Maybe like Douglas Adams kind of is a bit like that kind of vibe. But anyway, the target audience for these was about 7 to 14 year old. I think probably around age 10 at that time is probably the age group they were really hitting. And yeah, though the protagonist is written as gender neutral, their target audience was boys more. So the illustrations often show the main character as a boy. As you may have guessed from the themes above, those at that time were more typically aimed at boys, like spaceships and stuff. I don't know, it was just kind of considered that was just for boys. I don't know. It doesn't mean you couldn't read them if you were a girl. Obviously, I read them and I was a massive girly girl. So there you go. So Edward Packard came up with the ideas for these books after making up stories for his kids at bedtime. And one day he used to make up stories for them, and he got low on story ideas. So he created a little situation, and then he said to his kids, like, well, what would you do? And so they started to choose the way the story would go, and he would tell a little bit more of a story. And he decided to try this out as a book where you could choose your own path in the story, which is the structure we see today. So the series actually debuted in 1976 with Sugarcane Island. And originally they were printed by Vermont Crossroads, which was a very small publishing house. And then from there they moved over to Bantam, which is the format you kind of probably more recognize. And now they had that look that you can kind of see here, basically. So between 1970 and 1998, over 250 million of these books were sold by Bantam, and no less than 19 other publishing houses tried out their own lines that had this concept. So it was a big success, huge. I think the copyright and whatnot has changed hands in the time since, which I just didn't get into because it just looked complicated and, not that interesting. But this book format of like the choose your own adventure style stories has never left and is still popular. It also spawned other similar formats as well. Like, I don't know if any of you remember the fighting fantasy books, or there was a Give Yourself Goosebumps, which was like a choose your own adventure Goosebumps. I seem to remember those were pretty cool, actually. And they have reprints now. So if you go on a site called it's cyoa.com, so chooseyourownadventure.com, all the books there still have retained the look of the original ones. As the reprints came out, they changed the cover design later on. So on that site, I noticed you can get boxed sets by theme, and there was a unicorn one. I'm like, that is cool. That is fun. And there was also a Stranger Things one on there as well, which is, obviously really going to hit that 80s nostalgia. It has a great cover design, that one. So basically, the book sales fell into a decline for this as video games took over their market. So they kind of ended around 1999. But the books are still around, and of course, nostalgia has made this original series become a bit of a collector's item. So R.A. Montgomery and Edward Packard are frequent authors that you will see on these early books, amongst some others. They both wrote quite a few of these. Edward Packard is interesting. He's the one who invented the idea. And R.A. Montgomery worked at the first publishing house that took him on before they both went to Bantam. So according to Wikipedia, Packard wrote many other children's books as well, and is also a lawyer, essayist, and poet, and a graduate of Princeton and Columbia Law School. So there you go. It's kind of impressive, isn't it? I kind of tried to find some of his other children's books, and it looks like he was largely involved in this choose your own adventure world. But I did kind of, in my little research, I did find out that some of the other children's books that he wrote were the Sweet Valley books as a ghostwriter for Francine Pascal. So that was kind of fun. He amusingly also wrote a book called All It Takes: The 3 Keys to Making Wise Decisions and Not Making Stupid Ones. And I love that. That's so perfect coming from like the father of the Choose Your Own Adventure books. But yeah, a little side note of interest. And his grandson is apparently David Corrin Sweat, who was in House of Cards and like a bunch of other things. But he's cast as the new actor who's replacing Henry Cavill as Superman. So it's a random little fact for you. R.A. Montgomery, as I mentioned before, he was there almost from the beginning with Packard, and he wrote a bunch of these as well. He kind of liked to try and pick more far-flung places to encourage younger readers to be curious about the world and sort of geography and other places. He was a Yale graduate, so these were Ivy League people, these Choose Your Own Adventure guys. And he had a lifelong passion for education. And there's not a lot about him that I could find out, but his headshots show him with this like warm, cheeky smile, which to me is the face of a man who had the best dad jokes. So he seems to have written a few Choose Your Own Adventure for younger readers, like a series aimed at the younger audience. And a little bit of YA as well, but I don't know, the information on it was scanty, and I just, it was more just for interest's sake. I don't want to do like a huge deep dive. But yeah, a range of authors wrote these books, and the general consensus from people at the time who sort of cared about these things, like critics, teachers, librarians, they thought that these books had almost no literary merit. The quality of the writing is pretty sort of practical, and by some opinions, they're just badly written. Some of the plot lines within them, or endings, I'm not going to mention any names here of which books, but some of them are kind of bad. Some of them I was like, oh, okay, that's a bit average. But most of them are pretty good, in my opinion. So, I think you could realistically argue the case that they don't have literary merit, but I kind of think that that's missing the point. These books encouraged kids to read by sort of gamifying reading, but partly they were just fun. Like, they're reading but as a game, and I like how the child reading is the protagonist. They're interactive. They felt fresh and different. They have a sense of playfulness and humor, which to me feels aimed at the child and what children want and like, rather than at pleasing adults and educators. And I think there's a place for education, but I mean, even as an adult, you're going to read things where you're like, this has no literary merit, but I'm having a good time. And it's like, isn't that what reading's about a lot of the time, Anyway. So generally speaking, in these sort of book fair, as I think of them, videos, I usually pick like one book from a series and sort of spoil it and share it with you in these videos. But that doesn't work so well here because that's not the nature of how a Choose Your Own Adventure book is. So I have a little short stack of these to share with you instead. So I'm going to share a few of them with you. All of the ones that I have are printed from between, I think 1980 is the earliest and 86 is the latest. One of them is actually a 12th printing, which shows you how popular these were if they ran into that many, like being reprinted that many times. So first up is, I went with number 62 to share with you first, number 62 in the series. It's Sugarcane Island. This was 1986, technically. So this is number 62 in the series. You don't have to read these books in order in case you were curious. You just pick them up wherever you want. Yeah, so anyway, this was actually Packard's first book, like the prototype before the concept was picked up and published by Bantam. So this is the first ever one. So to quote this one, you stand on the deck of a large boat looking back at the Golden Gate Bridge as you set out into the Pacific Ocean. going to say Pacific Ocean. Anyway, you have been invited to join Dr. Carlton Frisbee on an expedition to the Galapagos Islands. Dr. Frisbee's studies turtles for zoos. The trip is great fun. There are scientists on board from several countries, and you enjoy talking to them about the strange species of animals found on isolated islands. But one day the boat is sailing along through the churning waters, and you are stretched out on your deck chair watching the flying fish when you see a huge wave heading towards the boat. The wave was caused by an earthquake somewhere on the ocean floor. It rolls across the water at you. The boat rises with it. Then the foaming water sweeps across the deck. It's too late to run. All you can do is grab hold of your deck chair. So, I mean, I feel like that's quite a dry opener for this book, to be fair. Some of them have a really exciting, well, I guess, being washed overboard is kind of exciting. Anyway, so basically in this book, you are a boy. We know this because the illustrations of us are of a very 80s looking kid who looks surprisingly dry for somebody who's just been washed up on a beach. But you find yourself shipwrecked alone on an island. But you're not alone for long. Soon you're just kind of crashing around the jungle, tripping over weird time-bending hermits, pirates who seem like they might eat you. There's the local population and native wildlife, especially snakes, a lot of snakes in this book. And there's this weird herd of identical dogs. So this is a fun one because there's a lot of funny, strange things happening on the island with each flip of the page. Like each thing is really like a dramatic little thing. And also, what makes this one fun is while there are some happy endings, there's one where it's like it was all a dream or you find treasure, but there's also a lot of endings where you get eaten by a shark or a tiger. And so as you're reading this book, you kind of have to think to try and stay alive. And yeah, I think that's great for a first book, even though it's 62. But I mean, this was the initial prototype with some added material. And I don't know. I feel like this is a really good little first entry. Yeah, so I kind of feel like with its kind of wacky plots and like ideas in this one, I can really see how this one was the one that helped it find the book concept find its readership. So I wanted to start off with that one. Going back to book number 4, we are in a book called Space and Beyond. This is from 1980. So arguably the 80s and even the late 70s produced some of the most iconic movies in the science fiction genre. And there was a lot of interest in space operas and space westerns. It was kind of not an uncommon theme. It was a popular subject, and this book is set in space. So just look at this cover. We have these lovely space colors like deep blue and royal purple, and then like the stark white of the spaceship. We have some really nice spaceship design. And then we have the you of this book, who has the most insanely huge chin. Like you could land the Nostromo on it. And he has this haircut that would make He-Man ask for the phone number of your barber. So it's kind of ridiculous. So to quote the little opening of this one, you were born on a spaceship traveling between galaxies. The spaceship is on a research mission. Because you have been born in space, you may choose which galaxy and planet you wish to belong to and have citizenship in. Phonon is 3 times the size of the planet Earth. The star that provides some of its life-giving force is huge but ancient. There is fear that it is losing its force. Phonon has a history filled with trouble. Zermacroid is in the galaxy Oopphos, far distant from the Milky Way galaxy. This galaxy has black holes and supernova stars. It has always been regarded as an uncertain region by observers and spacecraft crews. It is a difficult area, and the black holes are unplotted and dangerous. Reports from previous space probes say that Zermacroid has had a dim and troubled past. The reports also prophesied a bright and exciting future. So from there, you can choose Phonon as your birth planet or Zermicroid, and you can go from there. Yeah, this one's kind of fun. It has plenty of tension, from trying to choose a home planet to belong to in some plot lines to going back in time in another. I got to be a dinosaur for a bit in that one. The drawings in this one are wonderful. They're really funny. The spaceships and the black holes are kind of like nicely designed and kind of look very cool in space age and whatever. But then the characters really tickled me. So there's like weird aliens with loads of faces. And then there's us with a swell cleft in our chin and more. I think someone really loved this book because my copy of it has really well thumbed pages. Like they kind of feel a bit soft and it's a little bit dog-eared. So I think this may have been someone's favorite book. Unless it's just changed hands lots of times, but yeah, to quote again from this one, just for funsies. You act as natural as you can to help them understand that you are not a hostile person. These creatures of unknown origin seem to understand the body language of friendship. They reform again into a solid mass, and then they question you in a high metallic voice. It reminds you of early tapes that had been found in the Space Museum of an old civilization on an unnamed planet. There is the same tinkly sound. This is what they said. We are half object, half life form. The line between living and non-living things is not clear where we come from. But then, what is ever really clear? We need a creature like you to aid us in our transgalactic search for a new planet. Our planet is in grave danger of atomic reorganization, and we fear it will soon disintegrate. It's pretty exciting. Moving on, number 9 in the series is called Who Killed Harlow Thromby? What a great name. So this is from 81. And out of all of the ones here, I kind of feel like this one may be my favorite. And a big part of that is because of the absolute derps on the cover. Like they just look bizarre. The whole thing has a real 70s vibe to me because of the burnt oranges, chocolate browns, and the avocado green border of this cover design. I don't know how to describe the odd, like, bubblehead characters here and the vacant expression of these characters. And presumably this bow tie guy is a member of the undead. I'm not really sure what his problem is there. But yeah, in this era, it seems like it was not considered inappropriate to have murder as the theme of a book. I guess in this book, it's kind of because the series as a whole is so lighthearted that it's not sort of going to be scary or anything, I guess. But I will say there are other books, not in this series, but that were aimed at this age group that were about murder and death and some kind of serious themes. So it's definitely a different time. So to quote this one for you, it's been a year since the robber climbed in your Aunt Miranda's bedroom window at 2 o'clock in the morning. Just a little side note, I have an Aunt Miranda and she is awesome. So I rate Aunt Miranda's. Anyway, the next day you found a beer bottle in the bushes outside Aunt Miranda's house. Since she isn't the sort to toss beer bottles out the window, you handed it over to the police. The robber's fingerprints were on the bottle, and the police quickly identified him, and now he's safely behind bars. Since then, you've gotten quite a reputation as a detective. You've equipped yourself with a magnifying glass, fingerprint kit, and a cassette recorder, and you're ready for business. Some of your friends have decided to become detectives too. That's okay. They're just a bunch of amateurs. It's not a nice thing to say about your friends. Except maybe for that frizzy-haired girl down the street, Jenny Mudge, am I right? She's definitely smart. In fact, sometimes you think she might be smarter than you are. Now it looks like you've got your first big case. Harlow Thromby, president of Thromby Plastics Company, has just called and asked you to come to his house at 5 o'clock this afternoon. I hear you have sharp eyes, he said, and that's what I need right now. I think my life is in danger. So that's how this one opens. I think this is really cute. I love that in a kid's mind's eye, the idea that an adult in fear of their life might call on your detective skills and you'd get to solve the case. I mean, that's really cool, right? Because in real life, obviously, that's really inappropriate. But yeah, there's a really nice Agatha Christie vibe to this book. The case takes place in a big house with a maid in the kitchen and a greenhouse, that kind of thing, which is very Agatha Christie. There's a Miss Scarlet type person as the niece, sinister doctor who's kind of her boyfriend, and there's like the playboy nephew character type, and a bunch of others. And of course, the bumbling detective who couldn't catch a clue during clue mating season with a giant net. But he may just pip you to the post if you don't make the right choices, it's quite fun. Adding to the whole thing is the girl mentioned in that little excerpt that I read to you. She's kind of a girl next door type, and she's a bit of a Nancy Drew herself. So she's there to give you a run for your money. Or you can choose to team up with her if you want to. So I kind of like that. I think this one has a slightly different... it feels a little bit different when you're reading it because of the theme of the story. It's more like, do you want to follow this clue or that clue, that kind of thing, or do you want to question this person or that one? So it feels a little bit different than the others, but still kind of in the same same field, or I don't know what you want to call it. But yeah, I really like this one. I think it's really fun. It's a really good theme, and it works. The sort of mystery solving works really well for this format. So yeah, next up we have number 14, The Forbidden Castle. This one is cute. The cover art here reminds me a bit of the Gummy Bears cartoon, if you guys have seen that. It has like the boy and the girl and the castle and I don't know, the bright colors. But that disembodied head there is it's really its own creepy thing there. He looks pretty intense. When I was a kid, I loved that kind of story world, the like fantasy, knights and dragons, that kind of storybook stuff. So this one I think is quite appealing. You promised yourself never to go back into the cave of time, but when you found the opening behind a big boulder, you couldn't resist. The cave seemed darker than before. You slipped and fell, and now here you are lying in a field looking up into the branches of a big oak tree with no idea of where you are or even what century it might be. Rubbing your aching head, you take in the scene around you. You see a narrow dirt road and beyond it a fast-running brook. You hear the sound of hooves and a strange clanking noise. Someone is coming. You duck behind a tree as two men on horseback ride towards you. They're wearing shining metal armor. One of them carries a white banner with a golden lion on it. They must be knights. You watch as they rein in their horses and dismount just a few yards away. "It's been a long ride, Sir Rupert," says the taller one, "and you have had a long time to think. Tell me, have you solved the riddle of the Forbidden Castle?" So that's how this one opens. The Cave of Time mentioned there is actually... The Cave of Time is the title of the first ever Choose Your Own Adventure book from Bantam. So this one starts with a reference to that. You find yourself back in medieval times with knights, merry men defying the king in the forest, and more. Your task is to find the Forbidden Castle. So that's kind of the through line. You can only find it by solving a riddle, according to this old monk. And yeah, whoever finds the castle will rule all of Europe and have great riches and success and all of that stuff that you want. The king wants this badly himself, and he's kind of a despot that everybody hates. So you need to find the castle so that he can't. And to do that, you have to avoid being thrown in the dungeon because he's into that. And then restore happiness to the land in general, basically. Yeah, I think it's also the only way you can get back to your own time again, which is kind of a sad thought. But yeah, this one has a riddle in it. So you have to solve the riddle to find out where the castle is, that kind of thing. So there's kind of a mystery to solve. But yeah, I don't know. This one... I mean, it's good. I think all of these are good, but I found this one, like the the writing style and the tone was like a bit more serious and dry. And so it's like some of them, when you like each turn of the page, something insane is happening, and it's kind of like a riot, you know. And it's this one was just a little bit less fun than some of the others, in my opinion. But I definitely think that this is one that I would have enjoyed more as a kid, kind of imagining myself in the story world and sort of making decisions. And I think it's different now. I sort of find it a little bit more dull. So I will say that in its defense. Then we have number 15, which is House of Danger. I love that title. That's great. So this one's kind of interesting. This was the basis for I think it was the first Choose Your Own Adventure board game from Z-Man. The Z-Man's like the board game publisher, which I didn't realize were a thing, but they are. And they're kind of cute. The boxes kind of have the cover of the book on them, so they kind of look like a chunky version of the book. It's kind of cool. But yeah, I didn't know about them. They're something that's you can find in your board game stores now. Like it's a contemporary thing. They're not my sponsor. I sound like I'm trying to sell you a board game. I'm not. But Pro ZD has a review of this board game, like the House of Danger board game. So I think his videos are great. So if you want to go and see sort of what it's like, then I recommend his video on it. But this book is still in print. My edition has a little circle on it saying it's a book fair special edition, which kind of was cute. It felt appropriate to the theme of this series of videos, so I liked that. But I was not really able to find out what that meant. I was kind of wondering if maybe it wasn't, this edition of it was maybe not widely sold or something, because I think it only has like one or two ratings on Goodreads, but a later edition on Goodreads of the same book, like a reprint of it, has loads of reviews and ratings, but this edition doesn't. So I don't know, it's kind of a mystery. It doesn't really matter. It's fine. It was just one of those things where I kind of got curious about what it meant, you know, where you just kind of go, what is this? And then you Google it and you don't really find anything. So if any of you know, please feel free to tell me, because stuff like that just interests me. I don't know. Anyway, immediately from the cover, I feel like we're, you know, in lizard country, basically. It's like, it's just batshit. So take a look at it. There is a gold 80s house, or maybe it's a Soviet compound. We don't know. It has chimpanzees emerging from it, and we have a leering, what I think might be a Confederate soldier or Civil War era guy. Just in fairness, before you, like, if you're yelling at the screen right now, I'm not from America, so I don't know my Civil War stuff, so you know. Anyway, we also have a runaway cart at the bottom, kids in like very 80s jeans in the doorway, and then some kind of orange alien monkeys or something kind of menacing the kids. They, in my opinion, they kind of look like they want to eat the kids, which, you know, that's not great. But yeah, I would watch this. If this was a movie, if this was a poster for a movie, I would watch this. It just looks insane. And I wish it was an 80s movie that I could watch. So I am going to read you a quote from this book, and I hope you're ready for it, because this one is exciting. It's Tuesday afternoon in late June. You are on your way down to your lab in your parents' basement when the phone rings. You dash into the lab and pick it up. I need, says a weak voice. You hear a loud click and the phone goes dead. Drat, you weren't ready for that. You, the aspiring detective and psychic investigator, caught off guard. You slump down in your chair. That voice sounded pretty desperate. You look around you. The heat of the day has not penetrated your combination office and research laboratory, where you sit surrounded by the tools of your trade: infrared activated floodlights, high-speed movie cameras, and night scopes among them. Two large bookcases stretch from floor to ceiling, crammed with titles that would drive the timid from the room. Hear me turning the page there. Murder in Fun, Ghosts and Ghouls, and Corpses I Have Known, to name a few. The phone rings again, and this time you're ready. You pick up the receiver before the first ring dies out. At the same time, you switch on your tape recorder and your electronic phone tracer. You note the time, 2:42. Hello, you say. Help. I need your help. I mean, that's a real banger of an opening scene there. Detective and psychic investigator. You don't really hear as much about that kind of career path since Sax Rohmer died. And just, he has a lab in his basement, and I love it. In this one, we have a different artist for the illustrations inside, and I really like these. To me, this is a much more 80s comic style, I guess, or cartoon sort of art style than the earlier books. They kind of looked a little more late 70s in art style to me. Also, Corpses I Have Known. That sounds like the follow-up to Jessica Fletcher's The Corpse Danced at Midnight. I kind of wonder if it is. So you get a strange call and you decide to investigate the address the call came from, which was pretty high tech for the time. Being able to trace a call, this is before caller ID, and the drawing in the book, the kid has a rotary phone, but his own phone line. That was kind of cool in that era too. Before you leave, you think of the spider ghost case. It's something that before you leave the lab. Good times. I love this book. I just think I want to know what the spider ghost case is. I also really don't want to know what that is. So essentially you and some of your friends, if you make that choice, you can go without them. You go to the place where the coal came from, and it was the site of a prison that burnt down in a riot. And the Civil War soldier from the cover was the evil warden, and he's said to still haunt the prison. So there's now a modern building there built on the site where the prison burnt down, and there are plot lines involving ghosts and spirits, experiments, strange chimpanzees that can talk, and more. There's a lot here. This one has a lot of energy, and the plot lines diverge a whole lot depending on your choices, which makes this one of the more dynamic books to reread. It's kind of fun. I like that sometimes it's more ghosts and hauntings, and then other times it's more sci-fi, but on the whole, there's a bit of a Scooby-Doo kind of thing about the whole thing in the best possible way. I do have one other one called The Lost Tribe, which I'm not going to go into because it just kind of looks like it might be a little bit racist, and that's not really, we don't want to do that. But this one was set in New Zealand, and so it has some things that were designed to kind of get kids curious about other countries and other places and have a little bit of a educational vibe. So there is that one as well. So these are just some early samples, I guess, that I happen to have, but they are indicative of this series as a whole. For an adult reader, I can admit that these are not always the best writing, and they're a lot quicker reads than I remember. I remember taking a lot longer to read these, obviously, but I had a big nostalgia boost out of playing with these and reading them. They're a really clever idea, and they're very sort of playful, and they have like a joking tone, which I think they kind of aren't taking themselves seriously. And so I kind of rate them. I think they're pretty cool. Did you read these? Do you remember these? Do you have some favorite titles in the series that you loved or that were favorites? Or do you have a memory of a particular one of them? Because there's some really funny situations in these. So if you do, let me know. I would love to hear your thoughts and that kind of thing. And thank you for joining me for this little journey into the Choose Your Own Adventure rabbit hole and into my little world of nostalgic adult book fair-ness. You can check out some of my other videos. I also have another channel and socials, so you can find links below if you want more of that. And if you want to hang out again, remember to like and subscribe. And you can always leave a comment, let me know what you thought, or let me know what else you might want to see. Thank you.